This is the Late Round Podcast with your host, JJ Zacharisa.
What's up, everyone? It's JJ Zacharisa, the editor-in-chief at FanDuel and at NumberFire.com, and this is episode 282 of the Late Round Podcast, one of the many shows that are part of the FanDuel Podcast Network. Thanks for tuning in. I don't have a trend on today's show related to the quarterback injuries, but I'll speak in hyperbole and say that I've never seen anything like this. I'm in a lot of Superflex leagues, and I'm in a lot of Superflex Dynasty leagues, and everything's a disaster. So if you're feeling the pain, you're not alone. Now, before getting to this week's 10 trends, I wanted to send a reminder about FanDuel's World Fantasy Football Championship. From now through December 1st, you can enter a number of different qualifiers at different prize points to earn a seat at the $2.5 million live final in Puerto Rico or the $3.5 million online championship. For more info in the WFFC, visit fanduel.com/WFFC or download the app today. Eligibility restrictions may apply. Okay, so the first trend this week is that Cincinnati has a 3.93 pass-to-rush ratio so far this year in neutral game scripts. That's absurd. So basically, this is saying that the Bengals are throwing the ball 4 times as much as they're running it when games are within 6 points, when there's a 6-point margin. For reference, the team in second in neutral script ratio is actually the Jets, who have a 2.5 ratio. The Bengals have a new coaching regime that's clearly not afraid to throw the ball around. And that's great for all the fantasy assets there, including AJ Green, who should be back at some point this season. And Andy Dalton's become a great streaming option each week, except I don't like him that much here in week 3. Trend 2 is that Baltimore has targeted their tight ends at the highest rate in the league so far this season. The tight ends have a 45.9% target share. But as a result, they've targeted their wide receivers at the lowest rate. That seems like it wouldn't bode well for Hollywood Brown. And in most cases, it wouldn't. But Brown has a near 30% target share on the season. He's seen 2/3 of Baltimore's wide receiver targets. That's tied with Michael Thomas for the highest share of wide receiver targets in the league. This high tight end share is why those of you with Mark Andrews should feel pretty good about having him as your late round tight end. Not only has he been super efficient and really good, but the high target share means that even when Baltimore is more run heavy, he should still be just fine. There are only 2 running backs who have a running back rushing share above 90% and a target share above 18% through 2 games. One of those running backs is Christian McCaffrey. That's no surprise. The other one is Leonard Fournette. I talked about this on yesterday's 15 transaction show, but this is essentially why it's okay to buy Leonard Fournette right now, despite the fact that he's in a bad offense. I don't like buying running backs who are in bad offenses because it lowers their ceiling. They don't have as many scoring opportunities. But he's one of the few running backs in the NFL who's going to see a huge rushing share and a huge target share week in and week out. And volume drives this game. He may not have a huge touchdown ceiling, but now's the time to buy because he hasn't found the end zone yet and he hasn't been super effective. But that production is coming. The Steelers have allowed the most receiving yards, receptions, and touchdowns to slot receivers to start the year. Now, this isn't anything new, but the Steelers have continued to be bad against receivers in the slot. We saw Tyler Lockett with 7 catches for 61 yards last week against them, and in week 1, Josh Gordon and Phillip Dorsett combined for 3 touchdowns from the slot against the Steelers. Now, we can sit here and go back and forth about the Minkah Fitzpatrick deal that went down this week, but at the very least, we know that Fitzpatrick fills a need for the Steelers given his versatility and his ability to cover that area of the field. Pro Football Focus graded him as the best college slot corner they'd ever seen. So that'll likely change the way that we view slot receivers against Pittsburgh. And that's why I wanted to call out this specific trend before things change. Trend number 5 is that the Miami Dolphins are the only team with fewer than 100 combined pass and rush attempts. Meanwhile, they've run 3 total plays from a neutral game script this year. Now, I wanted to bring this up because there's this notion out there that if teams are trailing, then they're going to throw the ball more. That's true from a ratio standpoint, but teams need to be efficient in order to see volume. This is another reason to be a little bit worried about running backs and wide receivers on teams that just lost their quarterbacks. Less efficiency could mean fewer plays. Fewer plays means less volume, and that definitely means fewer touchdowns. Next is that Marcus Mariota has thrown just 5 passes that have gone 15 or more air yards this season. Rest in peace, your Corey Davis shares. The Titans are still running a conservative offense that's led them to a below average pass-to-rush ratio. Mariota's 5 deep ball attempts are the lowest in the league among quarterbacks who have played 2 full games. On the other side of that list is unsurprisingly Patrick Mahomes. He's thrown it 15 or more air yards on 22 of his throws. Number 2 is Kyler Murray. And then you have Matthew Stafford, Phillip Rivers, and Deshaun Watson. All of them have 17 or more deep ball attempts, or more than 3 times the amount as Marcus Mariota has. Trend 7 is that Aaron Jones actually saw a slightly smaller share of running back rushes in week 2 than he did in week 1. Now, this is just a reminder that we shouldn't just look at final game production and assume that everything is bad. This is really why we look at market share numbers. Because the Packers went from not being able to move the ball much in week 1 against Chicago, where they had just 52 combined rush and pass attempts, to 67 in week 2. So by looking at rushing share and target share, you can get more accurate usage numbers. Because when teams blow up and see a lot of offensive plays, the players seeing a higher percentage of their team's rushes or targets, they're going to benefit more. And that's what happened for Aaron Jones in week 2. And that's why it was easy to not sell him after his week 1 performance. Ben Roethlisberger leads the league in drop rate, or the percentage of attempts that have been dropped. That's thanks to Dante Moncrief having 5 drops on 11 targets. Close behind Roethlisberger, though, is Josh Allen. And by the way, this is all according to Pro Football Reference. But Josh Allen and Ben Roethlisberger are the only quarterbacks whose wide receivers have dropped 10% or more of their attempts. And actually, no quarterback has a rate above 7.7% outside of those 2 quarterbacks. Now, I don't really know if there's anything specifically to this one. I just thought it was interesting. Trend 9 is that David Montgomery now has 2 more rushes at the goal line than any other player in the league. This is big news for those of you who have Montgomery on your roster, because it's very clear that he's Chicago's goal line back. We didn't see the Bears within the opponent's 5 in week 1, but in week 2, Montgomery had 5 goal line rushes. It's not a huge surprise, and it's the way that it should be, but it's good news for Montgomery. As is the fact that his running back rush share went from 55% to 72% from week 1 to week 2, and his target share from 2% to 11%. Things are absolutely trending in the right direction for David Montgomery. And this last trend sort of plays on the previous one, and it's that there are 4 teams right now who still haven't run a play at the goal line. Those teams are the Lions, the Dolphins, the Jets, and surprisingly, the Saints. The Dolphins aren't that shocking. The Dolphins' offense is an absolute joke. It's an absolute disaster. And the Jets aren't that surprising either. And we know that the Jets are going to use Le'Veon Bell when they are close to the end zone. But like I alluded to in the 15 transaction show, we haven't seen who's going to be the goal line back in Detroit this year yet. That's a big deal for Kerryon Johnson. That's going to dictate his fantasy value a lot. And we'll likely see a lot of Alvin Kamara at the goal line for the Saints. Maybe not as much with Teddy Bridgewater under center, but we'll still see a lot of Kamara. But the question is, how is that going to be split with Latavius Murray? Because Latavius Murray has been one of the best goal line runners in football over the last couple of seasons. So we don't know how that split is exactly going to look, but we do know that Alvin Kamara should still get a lot of looks when they are there. But those opportunities are certainly being lowered now that Drew Brees is sidelined. That's going to do it for today's show, though. Thanks to you all for listening. If you've yet to subscribe to the Late Round Podcast, make sure you are by searching for it pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at LateRoundQB. And just so you guys are aware, Twitter is where I'm taking all of the mailbag questions this season. I'm still getting a good number of emails from people, but in season, it's just not possible for me to answer all of these emails. I apologize for it, but I just have to be honest. So hit me up on Twitter, send those mailbag questions in, and I'll try to get them on the show each Friday. Thanks, everyone. I'll talk to you tomorrow with a new matchups episode.